Wargaming just released the stats of the new tier 11 tanks, the Gorilla, the Fauteur and the Executor. And in today's video we're going to have a look at the unupgraded and upgraded stats as well as the ability, and I give you my own part of mustard to it. And with that, let's just jump right in with the Gorilla's ability. So the Gorilla basically has two states. The first state is when it's fully loaded, it does 800 damage. After that, it reloads for state 1, which takes around base 10 seconds, or here 8.8, and then it does 400 damage with reduced accuracy, reduced pen, reduced, I think, shell velocity, but don't count in it. But then, during this time, the loader is basically like getting one of these blast bags and putting it back in, which then results in the Gorilla doing its original 800 damage. You can also see it very well here. Right now we are at the 400 damage point. We don't pen. It's yellow because we don't have enough pen as one of the section. But if you go all the way up and we fully load, you can see the accuracy improved and it's turned green because now we have more pen and do our 800 alpha. So, Wargaming knows their players, right? So they introduced something which is actually very nice. 2 seconds before you're fully loaded to do the 800 damage roll, you cannot shoot. There is a lock period while it's still loading. This way, you're not basically reloading for 16, 18 seconds and then want to shoot and you do 400 damage. This is a little bit of a fail-safe, let's put it that way. And I think not only will this help your average player, it will definitely also help me, because I sometimes tend to be a itsy-bitsy too fast on these things. Needless to say, I'm glad it's two states, 400 and 800, because I was concerned this tank will do 400, then 650, and then 800 damage, so it can just pick and choose, which would basically defeat the point of something like the Object 432U or the Hirschkäfer in that regard. Anyway, there are certain interesting features about the ape. The main thing is, here we have the unupgraded stats, here we have the upgraded stats. Luckily, you will always start off with 800 alpha. Phew, there is no more alpha, it's not 850, thank goodness, we don't need more alpha. You only get an increase in penetration, which is still quite insane, 385mm of APCR penetration. That is gonna sting. That is not too bad. However, you also get increased or better aim time and better gun depression, because of course, better gun depression. And while we are at this point, I quickly need to do a little bit of me, aka crying, aka puking about this ability thing. Look, I understand that Wargaming wants to try and make it interesting for the player base to grind out this vehicle so you have a sense of achievement. Cough, cough, EA Darth Vader. But in the end, these upgrade systems, they're literally just a 325,000 XP paywall until your tank is actually good. I don't think that the ape is going to suffer as much as certain tanks, you know, like one of the tanks which suffers extremely hard under these upgrades is the AS40 or the Hirschkäfer, because unupgraded these are complete trash, genuinely. With some upgrades they're getting meh at best, and fully upgraded they are okayable to play. With this one, I'm not entirely sure. Yes, you will notice the upgrade system, but it's not too big of a deal, I think. Although I do believe that the Executor will be the best in that regard. Case in point is, I do not like the upgrade system. Wargaming already incentivizes you to play these tanks more, not only because of gun marks, because hey, that's the end goal usually in most tanks, but you also get gun sleeves and special camos and the kill tracker. So, you know, it is kind of interesting to just grind that, but nope, we have a 325,000 XP paywall until you can, you know, play that tank properly. And I think especially with the Fauteur, this is a big problem, but we'll get to that in just a second. As you can see, it is also impacting your multi-pack charge system. You go from 390 alpha to 400. not a big change, but there is a change. You also gain 5mm of pen, which is pretty significant. You basically gain 22% faster reload for the first shot. That is quite a big margin. And you gain 5% accuracy. Because now you say, but this is a bigger number. Why is that bad? Imagine it like that. You basically have to add it up. You know, like be like, oh, 0.36. So it's this times 1.3. Basically, more or less. So with this being a smaller number, it is better. And you've seen it in the video. I can quickly showcase to you here. You can see that right now it's this accurate, and as soon as it goes into the 800 damage mode, it becomes more accurate. That's basically this 125 percentage. So let's continue to the survivability of the monkey. The monkey definitely gets a little bit of more HP. We talk about 50 here, which is pretty decent. 2200 is not something to laugh at. The armor on paper looks kind of weak. In the video, definitely the cheeks looked weak-ish. Then again, though, against premium rounds, which are mostly on tier 11, I do believe the cope cage is gonna be pretty darn good. Like, probably really, really nice. And the upper plate, if you use the 7 degrees of gun depression, it's gonna be pretty bouncy. And the fact that the cupola is only on one side allows you to hide it easier than what the E4 has, because the E4 has the issue that it's in the middle of the tank. You can raise your gun up, but the gun mantle is massive, so that will be interesting to see how bouncy the gun mantle is. Lastly, we do have the mobility, which you get 1 kph in top speed. Okay, luckily nothing changed in reverse speed, and a little bit of HP per ton ratio. And that is the gorilla. Let's move over to the Fauteur. Fetur is, in my opinion, very interesting, and I do believe without upgrades you will notice quite a big difference, because you will always passively get more alpha, and with full upgrades this passive damage without even getting worse accuracy will be better. How does it work? You basically passively increase your alpha, as you can see by the gauge on the right hand side, and as soon as you shoot, it basically consumes that stacked up passive. Right now we go from 400 alpha all the way up to 500 alpha. It's basically the STK2 but in reverse, you know, where if you shoot more or wait, you get a more accurate gun. Here you just get more damage if you wait. And you shoot, and it consumes a little bit of your, what's it called, of your heat or your charge up, and then it does more damage. Now, the thing is, there is an additional bar up here, and if you press the key, you allow the gun to overheat. That results in you getting much worse accuracy, like you double your aim circle, and worse aim time, and worse gun handling. However, as soon as you get into this spot, you can see it is instant. You go from small to big in an instant, but you get an additional 100 alpha, which is absurd if you think about it. And it can go all the way up to 650 alpha on a 9.6 second reload time currently in the video. If you don't like this bad accuracy, you can disable this mode, it slowly goes down, and your accuracy gets better yet again. So what does this actually make, or what does this happen? You can see here without upgrades, or excuse me, without overheat, and here with overheat. If you shoot without overheat, you go down all the way to, if it's started loading up again, well, accuracy is actually the same. You can see for a quick second, it goes back up again though. So you can do an inaccurate shot and then just stay at 500 damage for a bit. However, in reload, you saw my yapping was a little bit too long. Here we are reloaded. You can see that without the overheat mode, we are at 470 alpha from 500. And with the upgrade mode, or overheat mode, we are from 650 back to 620. That is a massive jump, and again, that's on a 10-second reload. That means this ability may be extremely good or extremely bad. It's really hard to say. The fact that it doubles your accuracy is nuts. The main thing is there are, like, again, 2 types of tanks in the game on tier 11. Like some where the ability is part of the core gameplay loop. For example, Imbattable, AS40XT, the KR1, technically Contriever, you get the point. And there are tanks where the ability makes basically no impact at all. You know, that will be the Executor, we will see in just a bit, or the Stridswagen 107. The pillbox mode, you can basically only use 1 or 2 maps at all. Well, on all the other tanks usually, either it's ingrained in the tank's DNA, or you actually use it basically on every single map passively. Breaker, KR1 for example. And with this one, you passively always have higher alpha than 400 more or less, or very early on into the engagement. With this overheat mechanic though, that means that if you get into a brawl, chances are pretty high that if you know you will pen anyway and you don't need to be that accurate, you can spike your DPM insanely much. Again, as we saw here, you basically go from 500 to 475, and here you go from 650 to 620. That is still massively for the same reload, you know? But enough yapping about the picture, let's have a look at the stats of the tank. Interestingly enough, the alpha doesn't change. That's pretty decent. It stays at 400. However, the pen of the HE changes also by 5. That is peculiar. Obviously, you have another paywall behind getting actually better gun depression, and the reload time is getting down by half a second. That is quite substantial. And accuracy is getting better. And here you can see the induction propellant afterburner. There is no limit which is getting adjusted, but you will able to do around 5% more post-limit damage bonus. So it's after the bonus, which is interesting. So that is good. That is good. It only affects the post, like when you press the button and you get really, really inaccurate. That is what is being adjusted with the upgrades. So that is decent. Means that if you don't want to go into the overheat, maybe it's extremely gimmicky, you're not going to completely screw yourself over. However, you will get quite a decent jump in, let's put it that way, accuracy, or rather not being as inaccurate. Here you not only double your inaccuracy, you basically give it a plus 25% to it as well. Here it's just doubling it. And the aim time, it's the same. You basically get a quarter longer aim time without upgrades. While with upgrades, it's just double the aim time. So from 2.2 to 4.4. And the accuracy goes from 0.4 to 0.68, which I think is KV2 accuracy. HP Wargaming didn't tell us in their website, funnily enough. Apparently it's 2400, which is okay. Feels a little bit on the low side. Armor-wise, the video showcased that apparently this spot is going to be a weak spot, but it's really hard to say just from one still frame, so we have to wait for the armor models to be actually revealed when the update drops for, I think, Asia first on Monday. And then we get it on Wednesday and NA on Thursday, I think, or is it Tuesday? I don't know. Asia will get it first, as far as I'm aware. Lastly, mobility, luckily not something that was going to be changed on the reverse speed, but you get 73 kph on the maximum and 21.2 HP per ton ratio, which is pretty. Overall, again, I think it is going to be an interesting vehicle. About the ability, I don't think it's going to make a big difference unless you get into a brawl, which is probably a very niche situation where you can actually use the increase in damage. Because again, 600 alpha, that is pretty bonkers if you think about it. So lastly, we have the Executor, which I think the ability is probably the least game impactful, but it's a really nice thing to have, you know? And I think this is how upgrades should be, you know? A nice thing to have. So, Executor, you get a small burst of movement speed at the press of a button. And that movement speed bonus goes in reverse, which is pretty funny if you think about it. But that's great, you can go up to 50 kph in reverse for 5 seconds, which is pretty decent. And you can even see here, if you go up the hill, you can use it and brum 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 brum, you stay much faster going up the hill. Also, it loads up quicker if you are driving faster. You can maybe even use it multiple times when you are driving into positions, for example, hill on Malinovka. Now, you will notice something. It looks like most upgrades are purely based around its mobility, which is pretty interesting because look at that. Only pen is being adjusted and aim time. The damage doesn't get adjusted. Accuracy not adjusted. Gun depression not adjusted. Reload time not adjusted. That is pretty interesting. That would make probably the Executor the most comfy tier 11 tank to play around and not have issues with, let's put it that way. As you can see, you will get a little bit more hit points. You can also see that this thing has very, very poor armor, so don't count on your armor. Even the turret is fairly weakly armored. Maybe can bounce 1 or 2 stray shots, but don't count on it. Also, as we know, the Concept 5 is a tank with really poor armor. I genuinely think LNE is a must-have on it. And I do believe this is going to be the same thing with the Executor as well, as it's massive. It is based on a real vehicle, the MTDD, which is a South African wheeled tank prototype. But it's massive. Like, it's genuinely massive. So LNE was probably going to be very, very important. And lastly, the mobility. As you can see, you basically can achieve 2 additional kph in forward and reverse, and these are pretty decent mobility rates. And with the high pressure turbocharger assist, Jesus Christ, a mouthful, you can get up to 150% engine power. Your top speed doesn't change, it will always be capped at 70, but your reverse speed can go from 109% to 115%, which is pretty darn nifty, and the duration will go up from 4 seconds to 5 seconds. But again, it's not like with the Gorilla where you suddenly get a 22% increase in DPM or an additional like 50 or 25 damage more with the AMX M4. It is, again, I feel like with the Executor, it's probably the most comfy tank to play stock, if it comes to that, if I think about it. So, these were all the tier 11 vehicles which are coming with the latest update. Looking forward to the most, the Executor, and then the Fauteur, and then the Gorilla. I also think the Executor looks the most badass, while the Executor is the second, and the Gorilla is just a cope cage ape. Now you might be saying, ugh, another tier 11 fake fest where only one tier 11 is actually real. Man, maybe I need to take a short break. And that is where our today's sponsor, Iniba, comes in handy. Iniba is a way for you to get new games very cheap. It's a key store. And when they reached out to me and asked me, "Oi Raptor, you want to do a collab?" I was like, hell yeah. You know why? Because I'm using it. I have already been using Iniba quite often. I, for example, got Helldivers from it, a game I really do enjoy. And Iniba is just a platform I know I can trust to, that all of these codes are legitimate, they work, and it's just an easy process. And that is why I am very glad that we can partner up and I can recommend them to you. So please consider checking out Iniba. The links are down below, and thank you very much for Iniba for sponsoring this video. And with that, thank you so much for your attention. My name is RagingRaptor. Don't forget to subscribe and some feedback if you have any, and I'll see you around. Cheers.